Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to The Path to Financial Completion. How to Own Everything and Be Happy by myself, Ben, and my wife,
Megan.
So glad you joined us for this special broadcast and special occasion. Hopefully you'll find this information to be super helpful in regards to your finances and kind of where you want to go to in the future. So we're going to start out with a Bible verse, Proverbs 13, verse 22. It says, "A good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just." So I really like this verse because it really harps on leaving an inheritance to your children. And so the question would be, how do you leave an inheritance to your children? Well, leaving debt to your children if you were to pass away at a young age, or at any time, leaving any debt for anybody behind is never a good thing. So that's not how you want to leave an inheritance to your children or anybody who would take up your possible debts. So our aim with this financial broadcast and podcast is to help you get control over your finances so you can leave an inheritance to your children and their children, because generational wealth will continue to get passed down through the generations. Where we started. So in 2016, me and my wife, we got married in 2016. We started in debt with 2 car payments, $20,000 student loan, $10,000 of credit card debt. And from there, between 2016 and 2023, we paid off 2 cars, paid for a 3rd car in cash, and paid off a mortgage from October 2019 until a few months ago here in 2023. Altogether, we paid off approximately $405,000 in a 7-year span. A little interesting fact for you, the average American debt is $101,915 as of the 3rd quarter of 2022, according to Experian. So we started out with lots and lots of debt, not a good place to be. And so what we did, we came up with a plan. And we worked through it. We sacrificed for many years, not buying extravagant things. Where our friends and other people were buying extravagant stuff, going to Disney all the time, buying expensive clothes, food, whatever. We were pinching our pennies, so to speak. But we had a plan, and it paid off in this year of 2023, the year of completion. So 7 years marriage for us, and 7 years to be free completely of debt.
So as my husband said, we had to make a plan in the beginning because any goal is best executed with a proper plan. And the first step to preparing a plan is to write down all of your expenses to know where you're starting. In order to write down your expenses, you need to list out what your monthly expenses are, your electricity, your car payments, but also you need to include things like your credit card debt, what you have that's revolving, where you're starting, any streaming apps that come out monthly, anything that adds up, haircuts or your food budget when you're going out. If you go once a month to buy your food, you need to also include your weekly outages for going to the store to get milk and bread and things like that. So make sure you write a complete budget to know all of your expenses. That way you can be realistic about your expenses and set a goal for how much money you need left for fun money, so to speak. When we started, we set a number of how much money we would leave extra just to have fun, because we do have kids. So obviously we don't want them to be sitting in the house all the time. We want to get out and do fun stuff. So be realistic and setting a number that's going to leave you with enough money to be happy, but also to achieve your goals. And then write them down. So here's where you're starting with all of your goals that you want to keep in place. You want to have this amount of money. Here's all the things you're currently spending. And then see what you can get rid of to trim away the fat of unnecessary expenses. If you're streaming from 6 different cable apps like Paramount Plus, Netflix, Disney Plus, is there any way you can consolidate those? Like Walmart Plus offers Paramount Plus when you pay for the Walmart Plus service. So can you consolidate that to get rid of some of the expenses? From there, then you're going to set up your goals for yearly and your 5-year goal along with your career goals. It's important to have conversations, especially if you're married, on what your plans are. Whenever we started, I, communicated I wanted to stay home and homeschool and be able to stay home with the kids full time. At that point, we only had 2 kids. Now we have 4. So it's even more important for me to be able to do that. So in order to do that, we both talked through what would need to happen, what our expenses would have to look like so that we could be able to manage under one income. So we set that as our long-term goal. And then for yearly, we broke it down to, okay, this year we want to pay off this car. This year we want to save up X amount in our savings. So it's important to have bracket goals. That way you feel like you've accomplished something and are still motivated to keep moving forward.
Yeah, very good. Step number 2 is create your emergency fund. So in essence, you want to save up a 3-month buffer of funds in case you lose your job, get laid off, etc. And so what I mean is you need to have 3 months worth of money. So if all your expenses and bills add up to, let's just say, $2,000 a month, you want to take that times 3. So you want to have $6,000 in savings. So this is the first step, really, after you make your plan that you want to have available to you in case things get rough, right? So it's really, really important to build this up before you start tackling massive debts. And then if you take money out of your emergency fund, make sure you stop and replace it as you kind of go along, right? So if something big happens, air conditioner breaks, you got to take money out, make sure you replace it as soon as possible because you want to maintain that 3-month buffer in case you lose your job. Of course, you live in a super unstable economy. Many people I know have gotten laid off at the former company I used to work for. Many other companies are laid off. Microsoft laid off 10,000, for example. And layoffs have hit most companies at different points in time in this economy that we live in. So super important to make sure that you have your emergency fund built up and ready to go.
And just to circle back really quick, and that we want to emphasize the importance of starting with the emergency fund so that you don't start tackling those debts. And then if something does happen and you do lose your job, you have basically nothing to rely on and you end up back in more debt because you have to go and get money to cover those expenses. The next part after getting your emergency fund is picking what debt to tackle first. There are different literatures out there that'll tell you to start with the smallest debt or to start with the highest interest rate debt. I think it's important for you to personally look at what your expenses are in order to make that judgment. We don't have a preference personally on what we would recommend to start with, because if you have a debt that's $500 and you have a high interest rate debt that's $10,000, then it may be more beneficial to get rid of that small debt before you tackle something else. So that's important to look at your expenses when you write them down, decide where you want to start, what's going to be the most effective. And then once you pay off that first thing, whatever it is, you pay off your car, you don't take that money that you just earned back into your budget of $500, whatever it is, and say, oh, great, now I can go get another car, or I can go get something else on credit that will also have to raise your cost of living, because that would be against the point of what you're doing. So resist the temptation of going and splurging. Use it as a snowball effect to roll it into paying off your next thing. So now you've earned back $300 into your budget from paying off the car. I'm going to use that $300 a month to pay off my student loan. And so now instead of putting $100 a month towards my student loan, I have $400 when I add it to the $300, so I can pay it off faster. As you pay off more things, you'll have more money to put towards it, and it will work your debts down faster. Look at your debts, determine the best course to achieve your goals, but do not increase your cost of living when something's paid off. Or you get a raise. When you get a raise at your employment, then you may be tempted to go and splurge and get something, because it is exhausting to take on such a long debt tackling process. We get it. You can get fatigued. It's okay if you get a raise or something like that to take a month off, but make sure you don't increase it in a way that will impact you monthly, like going and getting something on a revolving credit that you're going to have to keep paying for. Use your bonuses, tax returns, any kind of extra money coming in wisely. This is something we saw during COVID when all the free money, as people called it, was coming in, and they would buy the TVs and all of the fun stuff that they normally wouldn't be able to afford, and they didn't set themselves up for success later. So now we're seeing those things circle back, and people are struggling in ways financially that they may have been able to fare better had they used it more wisely. It's okay to take a little bit of that money. We did take a small portion of the money to get stuff that we just wanted. It's okay to do that. Again, you don't want to fatigue yourself to where you give up, but also you have to use it wisely. So make sure you're not using all of it. You can use the rest of it to put towards your debt to work them down faster.
All right. Step number 4 may not apply to everyone if you don't have kids, or if you don't plan on having kids, or if your kids are really young. You could certainly hold off on step number 4. But if you're planning for college for your kids, so set a fixed amount each check to put in a separate account for your kids' college fund. So making sure that it's truly separate account, like completely separate, either maybe a money market account that's tied to your bank account, but you want to have a whole separate account so you don't even really mess with it. Even better if you have a whole completely separate bank account just for that at that point in time. That will really help you not to spend the money that's in the college fund. So like I said, there's flexibility for this step. Look at the age of your kids to determine whether step is prioritized or a mortgage or other steps in the process. So it's kind of up to you what you believe is the correct thing to do. And then make sure to separate gains and interest. Maybe my wife will jump in here and explain more what she's trying to say.
If you put it in a separate account and you don't touch it, then your account is likely to gain interest depending on what type of saving account you're putting it into.
Yeah, hence money market, because back in the day you could get a higher interest rate on that. So just bear that in mind when picking where to place the funds in regards to that. So that's an extra good tip my wife had.
Okay, so the big one is tackling your mortgage, and this is the one that everyone dreams about, and some people are never able to attain. It is attainable. We have attained it, and we attained it pretty quickly because we used the snowball method and also tapped into a few things that we'll go over. But the most important tip we have, when we were getting into tackling our mortgage, we did a lot of research and discovered that you cannot start tackling your mortgage unless you intend to see it all the way through. The reason being is that you start to pay this off and you get about halfway through your mortgage, and then suddenly you say, I'm not going to do this anymore for whatever reason. And then something happens and you're not able to pay on your mortgage. The bank will foreclose on you much faster than they would foreclose on someone who had not taken the steps to pay off half their mortgage ahead of time. This is because their financial interest in the money that they're going to get back is going to come back to them in a larger amount than someone who wasn't paid ahead. So don't start unless you're ready to see it through to the end. Using your 401k loans wisely in this, it may seem like something that is like the best step to go ahead and tap into your 401k loans. I would say make sure that your timing, if you have the ability to get a 401k loan, is something you're considering, an interest rate. For example, we had an interest rate when we had a mortgage roughly about 3%. Today, the interest rates are somewhere between 8 to 10% on your 401k loans. So you're still going to be paying back that interest. Yes, you're paying it back to yourself, but the payment itself may not be something that's wise to tap into a 401k loan if you wanted to pay off your mortgage, because the payment itself wouldn't work out. Because you do also have to consider, if you pay off your mortgage, you still have to pay the property taxes, the HOA fees, and any homeowner's insurance. So those costs can be, somewhere between $6,000 to $10,000 a year, depending on where you live, maybe even more. So consider those things whenever you're getting ready to pay it off and whatever method you're using. I'll let my husband cover how exactly we went about taking our mortgage out at the end.
All right, so a little tip. So if you do pay off your mortgage, you're saving yourself a lot of interest. So a lot of times, at least in our case, even at the 3.75%, I think it was, we would end up paying double the value of our house. So, for example, if our house was worth $400,000, we in the end would have paid the bank $800,000. So there's a big reason to pay off your mortgage early, because you'll save yourself massive amounts of interest, because you can put extra payments. You obviously have to make your minimum payment, which includes interest and escrow. You have to make that monthly payment, but then anything you make towards the principal just knocks the principal down, and that reduces how much interest you pay over time. And like my wife said, consider the expenses for monthly bills, of course. We've seen the homeowner's insurance policy here in Florida increase 33% year over year. It's gone up $1,000 in the past 2 years. So it's gone up tremendously. It went up from around $1,800 to about $2,800 at this point. So you're seeing massive increases on lots and lots of things. So make sure you consider all of that when looking at your mortgage. And so what we did, of course, we used any extra funds that we had, bonuses, that kind of thing, to put towards the mortgage principal. We paid our monthly bill. And then in the end, my wife ended up losing her job. So we closed out her 401k account at that point. And then we cashed that out and we put that towards the mortgage. So we closed it out, paid the taxes. We owe, I think, a little bit more in taxes for that. And then what I did, I ended up changing employers. So I took a loan out in between. And then I ended up closing that 401k account out. And then I transferred it to the new employer. So it got counted as a withdrawal. Now we are going to owe some taxes next year in regards to paying off the house, but the house is completely paid off. So at this point, we're just trying to save up a little bit extra money at this point in time to pay those taxes. And so next year will be completely free of any tax bill related to paying off the house. So you just got to look at the future. But paying off your debts and paying off your home is an investment in your future. And like the Bible says, it's leaving an inheritance to your children's children, because no one can take your house as long as your property taxes are paid every single year and your HOA fee is paid. There's nobody who can take your house based upon that. Not your single, if you just have one house. Nobody's going to be able to come after you in regards to that, right? So it's super important. You're investing in yourself and the future. Of course, we don't know what's to come. Many things are getting crazier. We're seeing more people lose their jobs, people getting foreclosed on. They just don't have the money to pay off a lot of stuff or to pay a lot of bills. So it's important you're still in a good position at this point in time when you're hearing our talk here today to really seriously consider it, to see what you can do with your extra income that you might have, or find ways to free up income to pay off debt. You know, it's an investment in the future. We don't know what tomorrow brings, and doing everything you can for your family, protecting yourself, is the best way to approach it. So step number 6, once you kind of get the mortgage paid off and kind of even in between with your extra money, because you will have some extra money from time to time. So building wealth and giving. So we believe in this. Definitely diversify your money if you can afford it. Get gold, have cash on hand. Silver is a good investment, just stable, guns, ammo, that kind of thing, storable food, and be prepared for whatever is to come, whatever the Lord leads you to do. I always say with that to pray, plan, and prepare. Pray about what the Lord would have you to do, make a plan, and then actually make your preparations, because we see things heating up more and more. Of course, at the time that this is being recorded, we have the war in Israel going on. We still have the war in Ukraine going on. So lots of uncertainty in the world and in the markets. So definitely diversify, because if one thing crashes out, I mean, gold, silver, guns, ammo, they're always going to have value. And invest in property. Property is always going to have value as well. So initially you're investing in yourself, because your property, your first property that you should have should be your home. And hopefully it's paid off at that point, because that's an investment in your property. And then remember to build up your savings account as well. Some people invest in the stock market. Excuse me. But build up your savings as much as you can. And like we read at the beginning of our talk here, generational wealth. A wise man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. So that's the goal. And we've been blessed with different gifts from family members, because they left an inheritance all the way through to my great-grandmother. That's kind of how we were able to get this house initially. Got some extra money for the down payment. So that was a blessing. And that's truly generational wealth being passed down. So always remember that. You're preparing your family for the future and what's to come, and investing in yourself. And then 401k usage, like my wife kind of mentioned briefly. Make sure to use the 401k loans wisely. What we did initially, we had $10,000 in credit card debt. The interest rate was super low at that point, maybe like 2 or 3%. So I took out a 401k loan, or both of us did. I can't quite recall. And we went ahead and paid off that $10,000 in credit card debt. And then we started working down, paying off that loan. So that's kind of the first thing that we did, because we didn't want to have super high interest rates. Some of the credit cards are extremely high, running up to 30%. So make sure you look at the 401k loans wisely and see how much the monthly repayment will be for each one. And then, of course, make sure to see how much your employer matches for 401k. I think my current employer matches up to 5%, I think it is. So I would always at least advise you to put in that amount, because otherwise you're leaving money on the table with your 401k. Most 401ks are pretty stable, even in this economy. They've been up and down somewhat, but certainly don't leave any money on the table. Some companies will match you up to 3%, so I would say invest 3%. And, keep that out of your monthly budget. Don't even consider that as part of your salary, what you make, because you're just going to go ahead and put it into the 401k. So that would be a wise thing to do with the matching and everything. Any other thoughts on that?
No. And the final summary of steps. So we started with preparing and making a plan, writing your budget, getting rid of any excess money, and creating your plan on where you want to go for a year and 5 year. Creating your emergency fund. You want to have your 3 months built up in the event you lose your job, so you can continue to survive until you find something else. Pick what debt to tackle first. That may be your smallest debt, maybe your highest interest rate debt. That is something that is a very personal choice. We trust that you will be able to make that decision on your own. Creating a college savings for your children. Make sure you're putting it into a separate account so that it's out of sight, out of mind, and can gain that interest over time. And tackling your mortgage. This is the big one, so make sure you have a good plan going into it on how you're going to do it, and doing it in a way that is wisely with consideration to the things that come after paying off your mortgage, like your property taxes and HOA fees and homeowners insurance. After you pay off your mortgage, then you can build wealth and give. And that is diversifying your wealth and making sure to give whenever it's necessary for tithing and things of that matter.
I would say, too, with giving, make sure you set aside a certain amount. That way you have that set aside for giving. Maybe it's $100 a paycheck, whatever it is, whatever the Lord leads you to do. We've been tremendously blessed, and not to say that we give money to get it back, because that's never the reason. But in situations where things were tight, we made sure to give what the Lord told us to give. So have a certain amount set and then stick to it. It's a promise to the Lord, and He'll honor you whatever that amount that He leads you to give. So it's super, super important. We've been tremendously blessed through that. So that's something we're going to continue to do forever.
And we included a sample monthly budget in case you're not familiar with what a budget looks like or how to put it together. It's not very complicated. You can just get a pen and paper and write it all down. And you can see it includes all of the different things that you would have to pay for, your mortgage, your food, internet, cable, but also it includes your enjoyment money, where we talked about setting aside a portion for you to just have fun, because it is very, very easy to get to a point where you burn out and you forget why you're doing it. It's okay to take that month off. Give yourself a little grace. If you need to do that, take a vacation. Just don't go too crazy to where you can't pull yourself back out. Make sure you're including things like gas or diapers or anything small that's taking up money every month consistently. If it's a reoccurring thing you pay for every month, then it needs to go onto your budget. And you can see also we have tithes on the bottom there. Some people may find that this is not something that they feel like they can do, but you can do it. And I think it's important for you to include tithes, whatever that amount is that you're going to set aside, because tithes do find their way back to you in unexpected ways. So it's important that you give back when you feel that you should, in terms of giving food to a food bank or giving money to a church or whatever the Lord calls you to do. You keep doing that, even if you say, well, I don't have enough money. You'll be surprised. We've many a times not felt that we had the money to give, but we did anyways because we felt called to do that, and it came back unexpectedly to us in sometimes more than what we gave originally. So that's not, of course, why you should give, but just saying when the Lord calls you, you should answer the call and continue to give.
Yeah, perfect. I think my wife summarized it well. And that's our broadcast for today, The Path to Financial Completion, how to own everything and be happy. Hope you all enjoyed it. Make sure and leave some comments below. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions. Be glad to help everyone we can.